Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Script. I'm your host, Nikki Lynn Mayo, and today we are going to get into manifestation's missing piece, which is the law of assumption. So, the law of assumption might not be as widely known. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. This was adopted by a teaching from Neville Goddard. If you haven't heard of him, I highly recommend that you check him out on YouTube or something. He was before our time, before a lot of our time. But the things that he says actually is a lot of the manifestation principles that I ended up adopting for myself because it just made more sense. What we hear often is the law of attraction, right? That is a lot more widely known. People talk about the law of attraction, and the law of attraction is the idea of, visualize, align your vibration, and call it in. Call in the things that you desire. But what if that's not the whole story? Think about this. How many times have you actually felt like you had to go call in your desires and then they came? Versus a time where you were like, I know I got that in the bag, right? I know that that's mine, and then it's yours. So, what if manifestation isn't necessarily about attracting anything at all, but it's about becoming the version of you that already has it? That is the missing piece, which is the law of assumption. Once you stop reaching and you just assume and embody the identity that has, reality is going to reorganize itself around your conviction because we are the ones who create our own reality. We are the ones in charge of our own reality. And so when we have our assumptions of what belongs to us and we remove the man-made time construct and all of these things, well, then reality is just going to reflect the things that we are convicted in. And that's what I'm going to break down in this episode is what that actually means, how Neville Goddard's teachings differ from mainstream manifestation, and how to know when it's time to move from energy work and over into embodiment. Okay. So, first things first. Actually, before I even get into the definitions of attraction and assumption and the difference and taking action and all of that, I want to share something with you first because I feel like a lot of you who are listening are going to be able to relate to this. So, when I was 18 years old, I had wanted to move out of my little tiny hometown in the Central Valley of California and I wanted to move to the Bay Area. And anybody who knows about the Bay Area knows the first thing they're going to tell you at 18 when you're coming from farm town is the Bay Area is so expensive, you're not going to be able to afford it. Nobody out here can afford to live out there. That's why we live out here. So that's what I was told. Was also told because of my age, there was no way that I was going to get a job to be able to financially support myself enough to withstand Bay Area pricing. Okay. And I wanted to move to San Jose, California. So I'm 18 years old and I'm like not listening to what anybody has to say because I think I know it all. And in doing so, I landed 3 job interviews. Okay. And I go out to the Bay Area to interview, and one of the interviews was for AT&T. Now, the salary back then that they were giving me, I was like, okay, this with commission, like I'll be able to afford my own place. Maybe not a super nice place, but I'll be able to afford my own place. So I had 3 interviews lined up that day. And I remember I drove out there. I had my old beat up like 1994 Geo Prism. That car was my baby. I had that car and I took it out there and I drove out to San Jose. I'm sorry, I drove out to Pleasanton first, and I had the AT&T interview with the hiring manager. And I told him my story. I said I live in the Central Valley. I'm looking to move. I'm fresh out of high school. Like this is that. And I felt that interview went so well, that it was so good. I was like, this job is mine. I did not go to my next interview. And I then got a call from the hiring manager that same day because it was about a 2.5 hour commute from where I lived at the time. I got a call from the hiring manager that same day and he was like, hey, we want to introduce you to the store manager. Can you come in for an interview, before you head back to the valley? And I was like, yeah, of course. So I went and I met with the store manager. And what was interesting about this is I had left the first interview assuming, this is before I knew what manifestation was, but I left the first interview assuming like, hey, this is mine. This job is mine. I'm moving to the Bay Area. And I went to the next interview. That one was a little shakier. And I don't mean shakier in terms of my answers were bad. I meant it was harder to read the energy of the guy who interviewed me. And so after that interview, I left. And I had missed my other interview. I didn't go to the other two interviews because I was like, this one is mine. I'm getting this job. So, anyways, I left. I drove back to the Central Valley about 2 hours. And I just remember like, I was a little bit conflicted. I was like, this job is mine. And at the same time, I'm not certain about this man's energy towards me, right? So, anyways, fast forward, long story short, fast forward the next week. Mind you, I did not go to the other interviews. I did not submit any other applications. I was like, I'm going to work for that company and I'm going to make decent money for an 18-year-old. So a week later, they called me and they offered me a position. Position was full-time with benefits. At the time, the year was 2012. Minimum wage was $8. My wage was $14 plus commission. Back then, that was big ballin', okay? But my point in sharing this story is I assumed that that position was already mine. And I lined up and detached and let go of everything that did not align with that. Okay. I didn't go to the other interviews because that didn't align with that. I did not look for another job because that didn't align with that. I just assumed, and so it was. Okay. Now, like I said, this is long before I knew anything about what manifestation was, the law of attraction, the law of assumption. I didn't know none of this. But my point in sharing this with you is if you look back on your life, for one, we're always manifesting. But for two, if you look back on your life, there are plenty of moments where you utilized the law of assumption and got what you wanted without even realizing it. And that's the point I want to make to you right now is think about when you have done that. Think about a time that you got what you wanted, even though odds were stacked against you a little bit. I'm not going to pretend like the odds were in my favor. For one, I'm out of town. For two, I'm 18 years old. I'm probably not even reliable at that point. For three, I have one job experience on my resume, and that's the job at Target that I had in high school as a cashier. I had no sales experience, none whatsoever. But I had conviction. And apparently I had a good story and they took me right on and I stayed there for a while. And sure enough, I had a studio apartment and then I had a 1-bedroom apartment and it was all funded by that. And I got rid of my Geo and I got my brand new Honda Civic that I had wanted at the time, 5 miles fresh off the lot. Like everything, that whole year was just a year of manifesting good things and I had no idea what I was doing. So that's be delusional to an extent. I looking back, I'm like, you were pretty delusional for a lot of that. So with that being said, let's get into the common misconception of attraction. Okay. So I had written a Substack on this, but I want to get into it again through this podcast episode. And I want to break down the Oxford English Dictionary definition of attraction. Attraction, by definition, is first, it's a noun. One, the action or power of evoking interest, pleasure, or liking for someone or something. Two, the action or power of drawing or pulling things toward oneself or each other, especially by a physical force such as magnetism or gravity. So when we actually break down the law of attraction, you are taking an action of pulling something towards you. Okay, especially by physical force such as magnetism or gravity, okay? You've taken an interest in something and now you're pulling it towards you. That is really what the definition breaks down to. Now, I want you to think for a moment, how hard is it to pull something towards you? When you go to move furniture or whatever and you're lifting something heavy, do you prefer to pull or do you like to push? Or do you like to simply just hold it? Let it be heavy and hold it, right? So when we think about that, attraction is already by definition a little bit difficult to do. Now, let's break down the Oxford English Dictionary of assumption. Assumption, also a noun, is a thing that is accepted as true or as certain to happen without proof. The second definition is the action of taking on power or responsibility. So when we think about assumption under the law of assumption, what are we doing? We are taking action, or I'm sorry, we are taking on power or responsibility of something that we have accepted as true or certain to happen, regardless of the proof, regardless of any type of proof. Okay. And so when we actually look at the difference between attraction and assumption, assumption is a lot easier to manage, right? Assumption is, well, you assume that what you desire already belongs to you because it does. So when you assume that something is yours, how does your identity respond? How do you act? Versus when you're looking to attract something. Think about if you have ever wanted to like make a crush like you, right? You're like pulling all the stops to like make yourself, seem attractive in the eyes of your crush or whatever. I'm thinking back to high school now. And it might not work. It just might not work, right? Versus like an assumption, when you assume something, you act a little bit differently. Okay? When you think about your 9 to 5 job and you knew payday was coming on Friday or Wednesday or whatever day, Monday, Tuesday, whatever day, you knew it was payday. How are you acting knowing that money is coming? You already assume that payday is here today. Now, could there be a slip up at the bank? Could there be a slip up in the paycheck? Could there be anything that gets thrown, in your way that allows you to not get paid that day? Of course, but you don't assume that's going to happen. You assume today is Friday, therefore today is payday. Therefore, I am going to act as if the money is coming into my account because I know and believe that it is. And see, it's easy to do that when we've been conditioned to see it in a structure like that, right? We've been conditioned to see it in a way that is predictable. I say this all the time. Humans love predictability. This is why people will stay attached to old identities that don't serve them because it's predictable, even if it's chaos, even if it's painful. It's a predictable level of pain. And so when we want to get into the law of assumption and assume that what we desire it already belongs to us. It's not about mental repetition. It's not about continuously repeating these affirmations. It's simply an identity embodiment. We embody the woman who has the thing. We embody the habits of the woman who has the thing, right? And so with this embodiment, and you can write down what it is that you desire, and then write down the habits that you keep to hold that. For my entrepreneurs listening, if there's a certain income that you are desiring, well, what are the habits that you keep that that has that income? You at that level, what is she doing differently than you at this level? The thing that gets very uncomfortable, conflicting, feelings of, oh my God, it's not working, is when reality doesn't yet match the assumption. But we have to take our mind off of that. We can't think about that. We can't get stuck on that. Because when you're stuck on how reality does not match what it is that you're assuming, then your focus is on everything that you don't have right now. Versus operating in the identity of the person who already has it and then allowing it to come to you at the right moment. That's really how it works. Okay. Now, I'm not demonizing the law of attraction. I'm actually going to bring it back. But my point in breaking down the definition of attraction is to show you that going to attract something is actually it can be semi difficult when you're trying to pull something in, right? But the similarities between the two laws, first and foremost, both operate through consciousness. Okay. Both are going to demand belief and emotional alignment. Both require awareness of thought as well as self-concept. You have to trust yourself to be able to manifest the things that you desire because you have to trust yourself to be able to keep it. If you are wanting to manifest a lot of money in your business and at the same time you don't trust yourself with money, well, you've got conflicting beliefs happening here. And that's why manifesting money sometimes seems so challenging. But what if I broke it down like this? When you look at the word attraction, what is in, and this is my favorite part. When you look at the word attraction, the word action exists right there in the word, right? Law of attraction, taking action. Okay. The law of assumption is you assume what is already yours. And so before I break this down, look at the word action by definition from the Oxford English Dictionary. 1, the fact or process of doing something typically to achieve an aim. 2, a thing done or an act. And then 3, the way in which something works or moves. Okay. So when we are assuming that what we desire already belongs to us, because it does, what is the action that we take that aligns with that? Because we just broke down action, the process of doing something, a thing done, the way in which something works or moves. So how do you work or move under the assumption that your desire already belongs to you? See, that is the key piece in the law of attraction, is you're taking action based on an assumption that what you desire is yours. What a lot of us are doing is we're taking action based on assumptions that exist in our current reality. And that's why we're stuck in our current reality. We're not assuming that anything bigger is available to us. We're not taking the action of the woman who has the thing. If you're looking to run a multiple six-figure business, well, what is the action that she takes? What is the daily action that she keeps? What are the habits that she has? And I've mentioned this before. Sometimes it's as simple as getting up earlier, right? Sometimes it's as simple as going to bed earlier, having a morning routine, right? Exercising. You have to analyze your habits. You have to analyze how you are right now and how you are in your assumptive state and bridge the gap. Take the action that bridges the gap. Because you already assume that it's on its way to you. We've established that, right? That's the assumption piece. So now you're taking daily action, you're breaking it down into micro moments, into the now, into the moments that exist before you, and you are taking the action that aligns with that assumption. Okay, so here's an example for shifting. Instead of thinking I'm attracting clients, you are essentially the coach whose calendar fills with ease. You are the coach who has a sold out program, right? So what are the actions that you take when you already know that it is done? When you assume it to be true, therefore it is done. Your actions will look different than the action of you going to attract the thing. Okay? When you have to attract, you're accidentally chasing. The irony is the most common affirmation, I don't chase, I attract, which yes, that is true. But if you're so focused on attracting, you're actually pulling, right? Versus assuming and then taking the actions that follow the assumption. So when we get into a nightly ritual, right? And this is like the Neville Goddard method. I did not make up this method. But one thing that he says is a nightly assumption practice is to feel the assumption as you go to sleep, right? When you're drifting into your sleep, that is the time where your brain is between it's slipping between consciousness. And that is the moment where he really zones in on feeling how you would feel as if it was already done. Okay? The main key takeaway that I want to leave you with is when it comes to manifestation, you are carrying the identity and embodiment of the person who has the thing, not necessarily the affirmation. And I'm not saying the affirmations are wrong. Let me be very clear. I'm not saying don't write affirmations. I'm not saying don't do affirmations. I'm not saying any of that. But write the affirmations in assumption, in an assumptive statement, and then carry the identity that embodies that assumptive statement. Okay. My favorite way to do affirmations is I am grateful for, and then write out the things you are grateful for that maybe don't exist yet in this reality, but that you know are available to you. Write them out as if they've already happened. This is the assumption, right? And then carry that identity that has it, embody the identity that has it, take the daily action and the steps and build the habits of the woman who has that thing. Okay? That is the main difference between the law of assumption and the law of attraction. The action is what bridges them together and allows you to be able to manifest what it is that you desire and get out of your identity loop. But to get out of the identity loop, you have to dissolve the current identity that is creating the loop of the reality of the things that you don't yet have that you desire. And you have to embody the identity of the woman who has the things that she desires, even if it feels like they're not here yet. Okay? So, if you found this episode helpful, definitely share it with a friend, a colleague, another woman entrepreneur, whomever you feel would benefit from listening to these ideologies around manifestation. You can also send me a DM of what was your favorite takeaway. You can send it. All of my user handles are the same at Nikki Lynn Mayo. I am on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Substack, of course. And I'm on Facebook. I did make a new Facebook, so you can find me over there. These episodes Beyond the Script drops every single Tuesday, so make sure you are subscribed to my Substack so you don't miss out. Subscribers get the episode first, then Apple and Spotify get the episode a little bit later. And if you are looking to do your own identity rewrite or anything like that, you can also subscribe to my Substack. I do have a 5-day identity rewrite challenge where you can learn how to rebuild your self-trust. Remember what I said earlier. Self-trust is also how you manifest your desires. So subscribe to my Substack and gain access to the 5-day challenge. And until next week, I will talk to you all then. Everybody have a great week and let me know what you manifest this week.